And welcome to the NFL Podcast with your host, Alec Pecado, on Tuesday, August 13th. Today's NFL Podcast, I will be giving you my record predictions for every team, my playoff predictions, and some stat leaders for the 2024 season. Why don't we get started here with the NFC East? And the team I have winning the NFC East is the Philadelphia Eagles, going 13-3. And I like the moves the Eagles made over the offseason. Signing Saquon Barkley away from the Giants, which I'll go more in depth on that toward the end of the episode, end of the podcast. But I like what the Eagles did. And I like their draft pick in the first round this year, Quinion Mitchell. I believe Quinion Mitchell's the one that went to the Eagles. If he isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Quinion Mitchell went to the Eagles in the first round. And I think that's the steal of the draft for me. Quinion Mitchell getting drafted by the Eagles. I think he's going to do a lot of good stuff for the Eagles. Unfortunately, Cowboys fans, I think you're going to have a gripe of me. I have the Cowboys finishing in second place, going 12-6. There we go. The Cowboys, to me, the Cowboys didn't really do anything in the offseason that made me want to put them ahead of Philadelphia. And the one big thing that's looming right now for Dallas is the contract dispute between CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys. If they can get that figured out before the season starts, then maybe the Cowboys can win more games. But if they don't have CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks ends up being the number one receiver, I think that might hurt the Cowboys offense a lot more than people think. Because CeeDee Lamb, to me, he's a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And I think if he's not on the Cowboys week one, that it's a big time mistake. And I don't think they should pay Dak because you could always draft a quarterback next year. Or you do have Trey Lance on the roster, and you could give Trey Lance an opportunity. Finishing in third in the NFC East, I have the Washington Commanders going 9-8. Now, Commanders fans, I like what you've done this offseason. Bringing in Austin Eckler, drafting Jaden Daniels, and not trading Terry McLaurin. I think that the Commanders will go 9-8 this year. Their first year under new head coach Raheem Morris. And I think that's a productive season. And finishing in last place in the NFC East, I have the New York Giants going 6-12. Big year for Brian Daboll, but I have my doubts. And one of them is Daniel Jones going to stay healthy the whole year? And is Daniel Jones going to be productive? If Daniel Jones is not productive, the Giants don't win more than 6 games. If he is, maybe they get up to 8 wins. But I think Daboll's hot seat is starting to get to the point where it's going to be a little bit hotter and hotter every week if they keep losing. Now we go to the NFC North. And the winners of the NFC North for me this year will be the Detroit Lions going 12-5. And I like what the Lions I like what the Lions have done in the offseason here. I like their draft. I like that they gave Amon-Ra a new contract. And I also like how they re-signed Jared Goff to make sure he does not go anywhere in free agency when his old contract was up. But the one question I have is can the Lions build on last year where they almost made it to the Super Bowl? Now, later on, at the end of the NFC portion, I will have my NFC playoff predictions, and you will see what seed I have the Lions. Finishing second in the NFC East is the Green Bay Packers, going 11-7 on the year. Yes, I know that's a weird record, but I have them winning 11 games. I like the addition of Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. And I like that this is Jordan Love's second year as a starting quarterback. And I like that they gave him, I know they had to hash out the money, but I like how they came to terms on an extension really fast compared to when Rodgers was there and it took forever to get an extension done. But my question is, how is their defense going to play this year? Is their defense going to be good? Or is it going to be like it was last year where it was awful? Finishing third in the NFC North, and this is going to surprise some people, is I have the Chicago Bears going 10-6. And I think for the Bears, I'm still not happy that they got rid of the Fields, but I think they'll be just fine with Caleb Williams. And you'll see later on how good I think Caleb Williams will be in his rookie season for the Bears. But I have them going 10-6 and finishing third place. And in last place in the NFC North, I have the Minnesota Vikings going 8-9. The Vikings, this is kind of a, how do I put it nicely? I'm not going to say rebuilding here. It's retooling. You still have Justin Jefferson. You did lose Kirk Cousins. But I know I'm biased toward J.J. McCarthy, but I think J.J. McCarthy might start week 1 for the Vikings. And if he does, maybe the Vikings win more games because I don't trust Sam Darnold. We've been through that. We've seen the Sam Darnold movie before. It does not end well. Now we get to the NFC West. And the winners of the NFC West for another year will be the San Francisco 49ers going 14-2. And the one, I'm not going to say issue I have, but the one skepticism I have of the 49ers is, can they get a long-term deal done with Brandon Ayuk? If they can, then I think they're set up. Even without Brandon Ayuk, they're still good. They got McCaffrey. They've got Kittle. They've got Debo. They've got a guy that I don't think should have gone in the first round, and Ricky Pearsall. I think that was kind of a reach. But we'll see. We will see how good Ricky Pearsall is actually going to be. Finishing second in the NFC West, I have the LA Rams going 12-7. And yes, they do get Matthew Stafford back. The only reason I don't have them winning the division is because I don't know how their defense is going to be without Aaron Donald. If they had Aaron Donald, it'd be a different story. They'd probably be higher up on the total poll in the wins, but they don't have Aaron Donald anymore. He retired. So I'm a little skeptical. And the other thing is, can Matthew Stafford stay healthy a whole season? Finishing third in the NFC West, I have the Arizona Cardinals going 9-8. And I love their first round pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. As you know, I'm an Ohio State fan. Maserati Marv, best receiver Ohio State's had in the last 10 years, other than Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Michael Thomas. I could keep going, but I'm not going to. And I like how they're building up for the future. 9-8 is a precise record prediction for the Cardinals. And finishing in last place in the NFC West is the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I know what some people are going to say. Why are the Seahawks in last place and not the Cardinals? Okay. The reason the Seahawks are in last place is because they have a new head coach, Mike Macdonald. And I like Macdonald, but I think it's going to take a couple years before the Seahawks are back on track and competing again in their division. And is Geno Smith going to be the quarterback the whole year again, or is it going to be Sam Howell? Now we get to my personal favorite division, the NFC South. And winning the NFC South for the fourth year in a row, is the fifth year in a row, actually, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going 11-7 on the year. I like what the Buccaneers did in the draft. They needed a center, and they got one in Graham Barton. I like Jalen McMillan. I like Bucky Irving. And I feel like the Buccaneers will win this division again. And I am particularly fond of one thing that the Bucs did. They re-signed both Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield. They're two key cornerstones of the team. Finishing in second in the NFC South, I have the Atlanta Falcons going 10-6. Now, the Falcons, I like their offseason. The only issue I have is they have a new head coach. And do I think that they're going to be better in their first year under their new head coach? Possibly. I think they win 10 games, and you will see in a minute whether I have them making the playoffs or not. Finishing in third in the NFC South, I have the Carolina Panthers going 8-9. Now, y'all can disagree with me on this, but I like what the Panthers did this offseason. They bulked up on the offensive line. They brought in some new offensive linemen. They traded for Deontay Johnson from the Steelers. They drafted Xavier Legette from South Carolina. They drafted Jatavian Sanders. They drafted Jonathan Brooks as well. I like Carolina's draft. And then in last place, unfortunately, Saints fans, it's not going to be a good year for you. I have you going 7-10, and I think Dennis Allen gets fired and let go and relieved of his job. Now, here's my NFC playoff prediction. Playoffs prediction for 2024. The number one seed in the NFC will be the San Francisco 49ers, going 14-2, NFC West champs. Number 2 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles, going 13-3, NFC East champs, going 12-5, and winning the NFC North are the Detroit Lions, going 11-7 and winning the NFC South, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the 3 wild cards are the Rams, the Packers, and the Falcons. Now we get to my playoffs. The NFC wild card round. You got the 7th seed Atlanta Falcons and the 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles beat the Falcons. I have the 6 seed Green Bay Packers and the 3 seed Detroit Lions, with the Lions winning. And then I have the 4 seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the 5 seed Los Angeles Rams, with the Buccaneers winning. We get to the divisional round now. And the divisional round, I have the Buccaneers traveling. NFC divisional round, Eagles and Lions. I have the Lions beating the Eagles. I have the Buccaneers beating the Rams. The 49ers. And then the NFC Championship game is the Lions and Buccaneers. And I think the Buccaneers get their redemption from last year. Now we get to the AFC. And we start with the AFC East. And winning the AFC East, I have the New York Jets going 13-4. Aaron Rodgers is back, and I think the Jets will win this division. Unfortunately, Dolphins fans, you're not going to like where I have you. You're not going to agree. In second place, I have the Buffalo Bills going 11-8. Now with the Bills, I'm a little skeptical on their wide receiver core because they lost Stephon Diggs, they lost Gabe Davis. Can Khalil Shakir step up? They did sign Curtis Samuel, and they drafted Keon Coleman. Can Keon Coleman be their new number 1 receiver? I think he can. In third place in the AFC East, I have the Miami Dolphins going 10-6. And Dolphins fans, I think you overpaid for Tua Tagovailoa. And I think that you're going to miss the playoffs this year. And in the last place in the AFC East, going 8-9, is the New England Patriots. And Patriots fans, I'm being generous here. I could have had you win 10 games or 9 games. I think you win 8 games with Gerard Mayo in his first year as the head coach. Now we get to the AFC North. Finishing in first place in the AFC North with a 13-4 record is the Cincinnati Bengals. And I like what the Bengals did in the offseason. I know they lost a couple of offensive linemen, but I like signing Zach Moss. I like bringing in I like promoting from within with your offensive coordinator because you did lose Brian Callahan, who became a head coach in Tennessee. But finishing in second place in the AFC North is the Baltimore Ravens going 11-8. Now, I will talk about the Ravens again later on in this segment, in this portion of the podcast, coming up in a few minutes. Finishing third in the AFC North, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers going 11-6. And let me... Unfortunately, Steelers fans, you do not make the playoffs this year. And then finishing in last place in the AFC North is the Cleveland Browns, going 10-7. Now, Browns fans, I think Deshaun Watson does have a good season, but how long is Chubb going to miss recovering from injury? Now we get to the AFC West. And this is where I have a shocker. I have the Chiefs winning the AFC West, but I only have them winning 12 games. They go 12-6. And you'll be even more shocked by who I have in third place in this division. But the Chiefs, you still got Mahomes, you still got Travis Kelce. They did sign Hollywood Brown, which prayers up to Hollywood Brown that he recovers in time for week 1. He had to be hospitalized after week 1 of the preseason with a scary injury. Finishing in second place in the AFC West, I have the LA Chargers going 11-7 on the season. And under their first-year head coach, Jim Harbaugh, which I like to hire a Harbaugh for the Chargers. I know I give him grief on a lot of stuff, but that's just how life goes. Sometimes life's not fair, and you have to learn to deal with it. Finishing in third place in the AFC West, I have the Denver Broncos going 10-6. I think Bo Nix, and come back to this video if I'm right, I think Bo Nix will start week 1 for the Broncos. Jarrett Stidham is not a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. And obviously we know Zach Wilson isn't either. So that means Bo Nix, I think, will start for the Broncos week 1 and lead him to a 10-6 record. And then finishing in last place in the AFC West is the Las Vegas Raiders, going 7-10. For the Raiders, there's a lot of stuff they need to work on. One being the fact that I don't think the Raiders know who their quarterback of the future is. I like Aiden O'Connell, but I feel like he's not a starting caliber quarterback because they've also got Gardner Minshew. And we've seen Minshew magic. He's not a franchise quarterback either by any stretch of the imagination. I do think the Raiders finished a 7-10 record and they end up getting a top 15 pick and drafting a quarterback. Now we get to the last division of the AFC South. And of course, I think the Houston Texans win this division with a record of 13-3. CJ Stroud is Himothy. CJ Stroud. And I like the trade they made for Stephon Diggs. I know there's people out there on social media that are glamoring that they're going to say, oh, he's a diva because he was with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota and Josh Allen in Buffalo. But I think the reason the Texans went out and traded for him is because they needed somebody. He's going to probably be the number 1, but they needed somebody so they could take the pressure off of Nico Collins and not have to have the pressure be on Nico Collins all the time or Tank Dell. Finishing in second place in the AFC South, I have the Colts going 10. The Indianapolis Colts going 10-7. The Colts are another team to me that had a really good offseason. And I think year 2 under with Anthony Richardson at quarterback and Shane Steichen as the head coach, I think the Colts take a massive step forward. Finishing in third place in the AFC South, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars going 9-8. I like what the Jags did this offseason. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round to replace Calvin Ridley. But I just think it's going to be between the Texans and the Colts for who gets the division. And then finishing in last place in the AFC South is the Tennessee Titans going 8-9 with Brian Callahan in his first season. I like Will Levis a lot. I think that Will Levis is a really good quarterback. Now we get to my playoff predictions for the AFC. Obviously, the top 4 seeds are the Texans, the Jets, and the Chiefs. Oh, no. The Texans, Bengals, Jets, and the Chiefs are the top 4 seeds. My wild cards are the Bills, the Ravens, and a surprise, the Broncos. In the wild card round, I have the Broncos, the 7th seed, taking on the 2 seed Bengals. And I think the Bengals beat the Broncos to knock the Broncos out of the playoffs. The next wild card matchup is the 4 seed Chiefs and the 5 seed Bills. I think the Bills beat the Chiefs to move on. And then the last wild card is Then we get to the division round. Yes, there's one more wild card, I think. Yes, there is the Jets and the Ravens. I think the Jets beat. No. Yeah, the Jets beat the Ravens in the wild card round. I apologize for that. Now we get to the division round. AFC divisional round. Bengals and Bills. I think the Bengals beat the Bills to move on. And then I think the Chiefs get beat by the Texans. And that sets up the AFC Championship game. No. The Bengals, yeah. Bengals Texans is the AFC Championship game. And I think the Texans beat the Bengals. And we get a Bucks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Houston Texans Super Bowl. And I think the Super Bowl champion in 2024 will be the Houston Texans. Now we get to the stat leaders. I think the guy that's going to lead the league in passing yards this year is Caleb Williams. And I think he becomes the first Bears quarterback to throw for 4,000 passing yards. His exact passing yardage will be 4,303. And second place is Patrick Mahomes, throwing for 3,240 yards. And finishing in third place is Joe Burrow, throwing for 3,280 yards. My rushing yardage leader, number 1 might not surprise people at all. It'll be Derrick Henry with the Ravens. I think he rushes for 3,000 yards this year. 3,244 yards. Finishing in second place is Breece Hall of the Jets with 3,244. And finishing in third from the Buccaneers with 2,149 rushing yards is Rachaad White. Now, receiving yards, we've got three guys. Number one, I think, is the obvious choice. Obviously, if Burrow's going to finish third in passing yards, you got to have his number one receiver finishing first in receiving yards, and that would be Ja'Marr Chase with 2,443. Finishing in second with 1,644 is Tyreek Hill. And finishing in third place is rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Cardinals with 1,544 receiving yards. And now my sack leaders for 2024 season, finishing in first place with 14 and a half sacks with a possible 15 is Joey Bosa of the Chargers. Finishing in second with 13 and a half sacks is Colts rookie Laiatu Latu. And finishing in third place with 12 and a half sacks is 49ers edge rusher, defensive lineman Nick Bosa. Now, here's some other predictions I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you two more predictions for the 2024 NFL season. The first one is I think Derek Carr gets benched at some point in the season, and the Saints end up transitioning and going to Spencer Rattler as their starting quarterback. And I think it could happen as soon as Derek Carr has a 2 or 3 interception game, or 2 interceptions and a fumble, or the Saints lose 3 or 4 games in a row, and they say, this is a wash. We're not making the playoffs. And the other bold prediction I have is I think there's 3 NFL coaches that get fired. Number one being the obvious one, Brian Daboll. I think Brian Daboll gets fired this year. I think that Kevin Stefanski might get fired too. And then the third one's a wild card between the third one is Dennis Allen of the Saints. I think Dennis Allen might get fired too. But that will wrap up today's episode of the NFL podcast. Please leave your comments in the comment section down below on YouTube and Rumble of your NFL 2024 predictions. And over on YouTube, people on Rumble, go over to and subscribe to my YouTube. It is Alec CFB. I will have videos on there later today on college football, and I might have another episode of the Fourth and Long podcast over here at some point, either today or tomorrow. But have a wonderful rest of your day.